views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
And hello and welcome to Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I'm your host, Daren Jaime. Today we're going to update you on what's happening in and around our borough as well as across New York City. Well, coming up on today's show, we'll learn about an organization that's actually mentoring students with the technology and workplace skills needed to build a successful career in the tech industry. And then also, we'll talk about chronic pain and the simple solutions you can do in order to help your diet as well as your lifestyle to help you out. And then a little bit later on in the show, we're going to learn about an organization that's actually fostering lifelong literacy for families and students in the South Bronx. And then we'll learn about an organization that has actually got an initiative that's taken to capture the voices of Bronx communities affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So stay tuned because all this and much more is heading your way. Right now, we're officially open. And hello, everyone. I'm Daren Jaime. Today is Wednesday, August 26th, and you're watching Open, a live interactive program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to your TV set. We also want to welcome our viewers on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, as Open is being broadcast live simultaneously on the Eminence channel. We also encourage you to stay connected to us on all of our social media platforms at BronxNet TV. Well, a lot has certainly been going on through the past week across New York City and our borough. We'll take you through a few things with our Bronx updates. We start off with the FDA. The Food and Drug Administration has announced it's issued an emergency use authorization for convalescent blood plasma as an experimental treatment for COVID-19. The treatment, which hinges on injecting antibodies from COVID-19 survivors into other patients to boost their body's defenses against the virus, has been used on at least 97,000 patients. So far, the plasma treatment has only produced middling data supporting its efficacy. President Trump stated in a press conference, quote, "This is what I've been looking to do for a long time." The announcement came just days after the FDA reportedly pulled back from issuing the same authorization over concerns from Dr. Anthony Fauci and other top government health officials about the effectiveness of the treatment. In other news, with many schools reopening, there are questions about the reopening process and what exactly that plan looks like. Our reporter, Jerelyn, brings us a story about how schools are handling the crisis.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced schools can reopen in the fall. Now, the question is how to reopen.
The people who are going to make the decisions are not a bunch of bureaucrats. It is going to be the parents and the teachers.
School districts must conduct 3 to 5 public sessions with parents and teachers by August 21st.
So the mentality of some of these school districts, well, we're going to announce that the schools are open. I don't care what you announce. If a parent is not going to send their child, it doesn't matter what date you pick or what plan you have.
Following the announcement, the city released a part of their plan through a video.
It's almost time for school. Here's what we're doing to protect our school communities from COVID-19.
4 million face masks, 3.5 million bottles of hand sanitizer, 80,000 canisters of disinfectant wipes, 7,350 maintenance staff disinfecting school buildings multiple times throughout the day, building inspections to ensure maximum ventilation, signage to promote physical distancing and practice good hygiene, all part of the city's plan to reopen schools. The city also creating a new DOE hotline for principals to expedite the delivery of these supplies. Chancellor Richard Carranza will also conduct unannounced safety checks of schools to ensure they are enforcing the safety standards. And while parents and students may or may not be excited for the new school year, there's still a possibility that these doors won't open.
No New York City school should open unless it meets the criteria, all of the criteria of our school safety report.
President of the United Federation of Teachers, Michael Mulgrew, asked de Blasio to use their school safety checklist before opening schools for in-person instruction. The 3-page UFT School and Safety Health Report includes the use of proper ventilation, hallway movement and circulation, repurposing gyms at playgrounds and auditoriums for learning spaces, among several other checkpoints.
If all the schools open on September 10th and not everything that we just laid out today is not in place, the union is prepared to go to court and or go on strike if we need to, yes.
The union also starting a school building reopening plan must meet safety standards petition on change.org. For more information on the city's plan on reopening, please visit schools.nyc.gov/return to school 2020. Reporting for BronxNet, Jericho Tran.
And thank you, Jericho. That is all the time we have for our Bronx update. Stay tuned. Open is going to open up even further with more coming up right after this.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community, and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting for BronxNet, Jericho Tran.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College. And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
And we welcome you back. The Knowledge House is a social change organization that's actually aiming to create a pipeline of empowered community leaders and workers from underutilized neighborhoods equipped with the skills necessary to launch careers or ventures spurring economic development in their communities. Joining us now and sharing a little bit more and providing further insight is the co-founder and CEO of Knowledge House, Jerelyn Rodriguez. And Jerelyn, good to have you.
Thanks so much for having me, Daren.
Glad to have you. So for people who don't know about Knowledge House, give us a little bit of a background as to what Knowledge House is all about.
Absolutely. The Knowledge House is a nonprofit organization. We're based in the South Bronx. It's our 6th year in operation, and we provide technology education programs to young people in the Bronx and across New York City.
And so when we talk about Knowledge House, a lot of digital programs are going forward. So talk to us about the virtual component and how that's so important, especially in a time like this.
Yeah, so as of now, all of our programs are virtual. We actually just concluded our summer programs last week, and we had 100 students online for the first time ever. So as you can imagine, that's one of the ways that we've been impacted by COVID-19. Usually our programs are in person, like the population that we serve, like they are low income, they usually need supportive services, and a lot of these supports we offer in person. But since March, we've been learning along with everyone else about how to do online learning right. And so we're really excited that we're getting better and better. We just graduated 100 students, and we're gonna launch a program in the fall in about a month.
And so when we talk about actually having such an impact, like in the tech community, it's huge. I mean, technology seems to be the order of the day. It's what we're doing right now. Talk to us about the impact that you feel that you're making in the tech community.
Absolutely. So for a while, everyone has known that tech careers offer opportunities for folks that don't have a college degree, for example. You know, like the tech sector is growing. It's one of the highest paying industries in New York City and across the country. And so for a population in the Bronx, you know, especially young people, they're digital natives. Like they are born learning how to go on YouTube and watch videos. And so our idea is that if our folks are online on these apps, playing video games, and they're consuming technology, why not empower them with digital skills so that they can start producing technology? So our program really teaches folks to become software developers and secure jobs in the data science field, web development field. And so far, 3 out of 4 of our graduates have been able to land their first job in tech after the Knowledge House. So we're really excited to be connecting our community to high-paying jobs, but we're also excited to be diversifying the tech sector. As you know, every tech company out there, every corporation has been wanting to diversify their workforce, but they've been slow to achieve it, right? So we're happy to contribute in that way.
So when you talk about the tech sector, right? Obviously, it's an area that's booming. It's an area that's going forward. Sometimes attracting people can be a challenge. What's it been like? I mean, I know you talk about how big your list is, but what's it been like for you in the area of recruiting and getting people to be a part of this?
Yeah, so I think one of the barriers is really that young people especially think that they need to be mathematicians to learn coding, right? And girls think that you have to be like a male geek to pursue this pathway, and that's just not true. First of all, there are so many occupations to pursue within tech, right? You don't have to be a coder. You can be a designer. You can test products. You can do project management. And like you can do sales, right? And so there are so many opportunities within the tech sector. It's our responsibility to educate young people that there's a lot of pathways to enter, right? And there are a lot of options to pursue tech via college, and there are non-college options as well. And so I think once we educate young people about the entryways, we can minimize those barriers, right? Something else that we've done at the Knowledge House is traditionally early on, our programs were heavy male. And so it was on us to recruit more staff that were women, have women really lead info sessions so that we're recruiting more girls, right? And then finally, hire teachers that are female so that our female students are empowered, they persist. And so there are different things that we can do to increase the access.
And so you've got something called the Innovation Fellowship. What's the Innovation Fellowship?
Yeah, so we're really excited to launch a new program this year. As I mentioned, in about a month, we're launching a new fall program. It is called the 2020 Innovation Fellowship. And it's a new and improved program. For the first 5 years at the Knowledge House, we realized that those alums that took 2 to 3 programs, which means that they took an intro to tech class and advanced job training, and they did like a paid internship at the Knowledge House, those students were in the most sustainable careers and they were getting paid the most. So we decided this year to combine all of those courses into one experience. So it's a 12-month program. It starts with learning the fundamentals of computer programming, and then you go into advanced project-based job training, and then you end in a paid 3-month internship. This experience is really going to guarantee that our students are 100% ready to diversify the tech industry, land these promising careers, and get paid high wages. Because they're with us for longer, the program is more rigorous, and again, they get supportive services, which is so critical for this population. So we're really excited. We have summer students doing pre-work right now, and then the program officially launches in September. What we are also doing to support this program is that we are partnering with tech companies, corporations, so that employees can volunteer at the Knowledge House, they can mentor our students, and our students get that real world access to what it's like working in tech. And so we're really excited to be supporting our talent and improving our job placement outcomes.
Give me a little bit about COVID-19? Because as we know, it had a huge impact on a lot of people in terms of how they've had to pivot and shift. You've had to pivot and shift yourself in your own kind of way, but at the same time, you guys didn't allow COVID-19 to kind of like hold you down. You even did something on Instagram.
Yeah, so absolutely, COVID has pushed us to be innovative. As I mentioned, we are now 100% virtual. And so back in March, we had 2 classes that had to convert to a virtual environment. And we learned a lot since then, right? Like back then we were using Google Hangouts for live instruction. And then a few months later, we decided that Zoom was a better software to use, right? Zoom has a raise your hand feature, it has breakouts. And so we also learned about asynchronous learning being more effective than synchronous learning, right? Before, we had literally students 3 to 4 hours live on a Zoom. And now we have, for example, a 1-hour lecture in the beginning, then some self-paced independent work in the middle, and then there's a closeout, again, in like a whole group, you know? So just the fact that we are learning about how to do online learning better is one of the ways that COVID has pushed us. Obviously, we had to learn how to recruit virtually, and that's where the Instagram came in, right? Usually, applicants learn about the Knowledge House through word of mouth. But we had to invest in Instagram ads. We also had to provide digital literacy workshops to the general public via Instagram. And slowly but surely, this helped us keep receiving applicants. Actually, as of like March 19th, right after COVID hit, our applications to the Innovation Fellowship increased by 90%, you know? And so I would say that we're lucky because we're one of those job training nonprofits that is still able to resume our programs, right? Like we haven't had to pause because the online job training is possible. A lot of job training programs, like it's not easy to deliver online. And so that way we're lucky. And beyond that, we've been able to be of service to our community. You know, like now we're partnering with community-based organizations so that we can upskill their constituents, right? Like, let's say there's a nonprofit that provides customer service training for like retail jobs or construct. The Knowledge House can partner with that community-based organization and provide very simple digital skills training to their participants, like how to use Zoom, right? How to become better at email. Even for entrepreneurs that have been impacted by COVID, the Knowledge House can now train them on how to market your services online. You know, like how to use social media to do that, how to increase your digital presence via Yelp, etc. So even though COVID has presented a lot of challenges, you know, like we've had a lot of cash flow issues, financial health was really at risk because of COVID. We've been able to learn, and as you said, like really use it as an opportunity to not get stuck.
Right. Well, Jerelyn, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for sharing about the Knowledge House. And certainly we will make sure that our viewers are connected. But thanks for taking the time to being with us here and talk a little bit about the Knowledge House.
Thank you so much, Daren, and have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
A great one, too. Listen, now I want people to know if you want more information about the Knowledge House, all you got to do is visit their website. The website is called knowledgehouse.org. And you can follow them on Instagram and Facebook at The Knowledge House. Don't go anywhere. We got more show. We'll be right back with more Open coming up right after this. And thank you for staying with us. According to the CDC, more than 50 million Americans suffer from chronic pain. And although there's no cure for chronic pain, the condition can be managed successfully. It's important to stick to your pain management plan to help relieve symptoms. And the question is, what dietary and lifestyle changes can you have in helping you to reduce chronic pain? Well, joining us to share more is the owner of Washington Heights Wellness, Dr. Rosanna de la Cruz. And we thank you so much for joining us, Dr. de la Cruz.
Thank you for having us, Jaime. Thank you. It's an honor.
Good to be here. Good to have you with us. So when we talk about chronic pain, obviously it is something that a lot of people suffer with. And I guess the question is navigating and dealing with it. But from your estimation, as we said, about 50 million Americans suffer from chronic pain. How do you handle?
Well, here at Washington Heights Wellness, we treat lots of people with chronic pain. And, you know, we start to look at the root cause of the problem, because a lot of times we start to feel pain way later after it's been accumulating. What's always present when we are talking about chronic pain is inflammation. Inflammation could be looking like swelling in the specific area. It could be red. It could also be pain. So even if there is no pain at the moment, even if you are experiencing any of those symptoms, you know that there is chronic pain in the process is going to show up any moment. So I would say the best way to approach inflammation, which, by the way, inflammation is a good thing. Inflammation, we hear a lot when we go to our doctor, oh, you have too much inflammation. If you have chronic pain, that's probably a word that you hear everywhere in every doctor's office you go to. So inflammation is the first line of defense for the body, because it's a way of the body defending itself, kind of sending us red signals, letting us know where things are going wrong. So the problem starts when we have chronic inflammation, where the body is constantly fighting and sending us those red signals. A great way to start taking care of ourselves and reduce the chronic inflammation is by definitely, like you say, Jaime, making sure that we are having some dietary changes along with some lifestyle changes. Some of the dietary changes that we can start putting in place is reducing dairy. So it's been proven, you know, a lot of times we go, oh, I just take the 2%, or I just do the lactose free, when in fact it's not the lactose or the fat that causes inflammation. There is an enzyme called casein, which is very difficult for the body to metabolize or digest. Therefore, it is important to start reducing the amount of dairy so we can stop having chronic inflammation and therefore alleviate pain, specifically chronic pain.
Can I jump in and talk about this right here? Well, you said reduce dairy, right? So we talk about reducing it. What would be an optimal amount for people to say? Because, you know, some people say, well, you know, I'm reducing, but that might not be exactly what's necessary.
That's right. I always say the exception is not the rule when it comes to our health. What that means is it really depends on how much dairy we're intaking. For example, a day we'll probably have a sandwich where there is cheese, and sometimes they put 2 types of cheese. I often tell my patients to try to change the cheese for avocado, which I know is not even close to it, but it's a much better choice. Yes, I love cheese too. I love Manchego cheese. It's one of my favorite cheeses, but I don't have any chronic pain, so I indulge probably more often than I should. But going back to your question, so it really depends how much dairy we are intaking. So once a week, some small amount of cheese is not damage our whole health. But if we have today, for example, we have the cereal with milk, and then later we have a sandwich with cheese, and then we come back home again, we have some dairy. Definitely it's a pro-inflammatory food, which we should reduce to a minimum. So if you, whatever you're doing, reduce it to 95%, meaning by that 5% of the time during the week. Again, it doesn't mean that you'll never have dairy again, or that you always have to be at 5% of dairy intake. What it means is that while you're going through this chronic pain, or chronic inflammation, it is important to start reducing the pro-inflammatory foods, which also processed foods usually are pro-inflammatory because they take a lot more chemicals to be able to keep them on the shelves longer. So I always go back to unprocessed foods. But if we eliminate two major culprits of inflammation, which is flour, which is a processed food that includes bread, and milk, we're already reducing almost all processed foods because those two items are almost in every processed food. So those are my two, the first two type of foods that I suggest my patients to stop eating when we start treating chronic pain.
Mm-hmm. And then I also know that when you talk about procedures for chronic pain, right, the way things have changed medically, we've seen certain advancements. I know that there's strategies in integrative medicine now that's designed to helping and assisting people who actually go through this.
Yes, absolutely. Here at Washington Heights Wellness, we incorporate many modalities, including acupuncture, which is been proven to be safe and effective. And people that have been in pain for lots of time and many, many years are now, we've helped thousands of people eliminate their pain and go back to their quality of life that they expect from themselves, including, going back to work, being more productive, being able to enjoy their time with their family, going to sleep and have a full night's sleep without feeling pain. Those are very big problems that can cause poor quality of life for us when we have chronic pain. So there are many, many options. I always like to use the integrative medicine. Also, I always encourage my patients to give themselves a chance to allow their body to heal, which is happening for all of us right now. The body heals itself, and the natural state of our body is healthy. 95% of the people that have on this planet are born completely healthy. So most of the stuff that we get along the way, of course, there is trauma like accidents and falls, but they are definitely rooted in dietary and lifestyle corrections. So if we adjust that, we can definitely eliminate pain along with other modalities that many experts can help. There are many people that dedicate their lives to help people eliminate pain, and I am one of them.
We hear a lot about electronic stimulation. How effective is electronic stimulation when dealing with chronic pain?
Yes, we use it here. We call it e-stim or microstimulation. Mm-hmm. We already have this happening in our body. That's the way we digest foods. That's the way that we heal wounds. That's the way that all organs regenerate themselves. So there are specific frequencies that some machines have. There are some machines that are better than others because they have different type of frequencies. And these frequencies we attach, in this case, we attach it to the acupuncture site with a very, very tiny and completely painless needle. That allows the blood to flow, to move inflammation, and in some cases even swelling in an area where there is chronic pain. And this microstimulation helps a lot because a lot of times when we are in chronic pain, it's because there's something stuck there, whether it's blood or fluids or excess of the same fluids that are caused by inflammation. So as we start to unblock that area, then the blood flow will also help with the inflammation and the pain. So every time we have pain, there is poor blood circulation to those areas along with inflammation.
We know that sometimes when people deal with chronic pain, one of the greatest things that they do is they get back to this thing called idleness. They don't do much. I'm in too much pain. I don't want to do much. But we know that sometimes just sitting in pain is really the worst thing that you can possibly do.
Absolutely. And I always tell my patients that it's not okay to feel pain. And sometimes we kind of get used to it. And the same way, a lot of my patients, when they start eliminating their pain, what's the pain level this week? I say, you know what? I haven't even have any pain this week. That's awesome. Now we can continue to stabilize and transition that patient into going back to the regular activities and sports in some cases. So yes, it is not okay to sit with pain. And actually, when we are dealing with pain, we are also affecting our mental, emotional state. Many people start having other underlying disorders, including hypertension. It's been proven that when people have very high levels of pain, they can also develop high blood pressure. So it is not okay to sit in pain. There are options, and it is possible for a person to go from a 10 out of 10 pain level to 0 and go back to their high quality of life.
Well, before we leave, please tell people where they can find you in case they want to get some more help.
Absolutely. We are here at Washington Heights Wellness, New York City. That's the name of the community, Washington Heights. We help many people from the Bronx as well. We're approximately half a mile away from the Bronx. And we offer a free consultation here. I always like to tell my patients, I like to see them make sure that I can help them. And also tell them if I can't, I can refer someone else. In some cases, we've had to get some other tests to make sure that there are no other underlying conditions. But we're here at WashingtonHeightsWellness.com, and we start with a free consultation that we're more than happy to extend to our patients so we can start eliminating chronic pain and other chronic conditions.
All righty. Well, Dr. Rosanna de la Cruz, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much for being with us here.
Thank you, Jaime. It's always an honor.
All righty. Listen, for more information now, all you got to do is visit their website, acupuncturelocal.com. Stay tuned. We've got more show coming up right after this.
It looks bleak. It feels bleak. But the city isn't shut down because our public services keep working. In spite of, and in the face of, the dangers, we can count on them. And to keep them working and funded now and in the future, we need to be counted. Self-respond now to the 2020 census at my2020census.gov.
And thank you for staying with us. Start Lighthouse is a not-for-profit supporting lifelong literacy through a 2-generational approach by creating access through customized literacy kits, literacy programming with a racial justice lens, as well as fundamental workshops for families. Joining us to tell a little bit more about this is Executive Director and co-founder of Start Lighthouse, Rita Mandahi, also co-founder Anya Morales, and also we'll be talking a little bit more about how this impacts our community. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, glad to have you. So give us a little bit of a walkthrough about Start Lighthouse for somebody who just walks in and says, who are they? Explain.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. And just to start, for us, we had been ideating about creating our own literacy initiative since October 2019. And we had spent a lot of time just reflecting on our own personal experiences. Both Anya and I have taught in the South Bronx and have been in the education sector for several years now. And we realized that the biggest barrier to literacy proficiency is access to books. And we realized that is such a pressing matter, and that was something that we actively wanted to be able to address with our organization. So we officially launched Start Lighthouse this past March during the pandemic, which is actually crazy to say out loud, but I think the pandemic almost accelerated our organization further. There was such a great need for the work that we were doing, given the fact that many districts didn't have real contingency plans in place with digital learning and what that was actually supposed to look like. And we realized that what kids genuinely needed were books, given the fact that we had widespread school and library closures. And that's what led to our first initiative, which was creating these customized literacy kits for students in grades K to 8.
You said right around the time the COVID-19 hits, here you go, and you're bringing your organization, full steam ahead. Talk to us about the virtual component and the literacy component and how you guys are able to navigate that.
I think with that, like trying to figure out how to navigate that was realizing how can we bring these books to kids first, because our first aspect was the physical book. So making these lit kits and partnering up with PS Port Morris, our first school, that we were able to create these kits and like make these students get these books. And with those books, we create worksheets that students can do when they're reading this book, and their parents can contribute with and have that conversation, even if they're not familiar with the book. We do it in English and Spanish, so there's not a learning gap with that or a language barrier, and that can assist with what they're already learning. We make sure like if you're getting a kindergarten lit kit, you're getting like drawing cards, crayons, you're getting books for that level and guiding questions for that for kindergarten, as well as like if you go to 8th grade, that's our last grade we work with, you're gonna have all that support no matter where your child's at, and you can support them even if you're not familiar with the material. On an online basis, we started doing, we had our racial justice program called Little Woke Activists this summer, a 6-week program that me and Rena are very proud of, that we focused on building foundational literacy skills with the younger students at this point, and we incorporated social justice issues. So we talked about Black Lives Matter, we talked about civil rights movement. We talked about from the very beginning, our first week was identity, like how do we identify and like where our families come from, what does that look like living in the South Bronx? And even with that, it was beautiful to see these students connect in different ways. Like, yeah, I'm Black or I'm Latino, I'm from Bangladesh. Like to see them have these authentic and organic conversations naturally was just like an amazing thing to see. So I think we're able to kind of broaden that gap in that way, not only physically, but online.
And you're coming off of a major event this past weekend. You've also had the Literacy for Community Fair, an opportunity for the community actually to get connected. Talk about that and what that did for the community residents.
Yeah, absolutely. So we as an organization have been able to collect 975 brand new books, which is just been beyond incredible and something that we just hadn't anticipated happening. And in May, actually, we had our first distribution take place within the community through our partnership with PS5 Port Morris. And in May, we had distributed 300 brand new books in the form of our customized literacy kits. Our books, our kits, they went within the hour. And the response was so tremendous. And I remember just reflecting with our team and just thinking, wow, like the fact that like our kits were gone within the hour and families and students were still coming, asking about them throughout the afternoon. And it made me realize personally, like there's so much work to be done and there's so many students that we ultimately want to reach. So over the past few months, we've been able to fundraise. We got an incredibly generous donation from Kobe Yamada and the Compendium team. He's the author of What Do You Do with an Idea? And his team generously donated 500 copies of his book to us. So with that generous donation and our fundraising efforts, we were able to put together a Literacy for All event that took place this past Saturday. Mm-hmm. And for the event, Anya and Brittany and I knew that we wanted to be able to involve organizations within the community, organizations that are doing similar work, and just bring everyone together. So for that event, we were able to partner with Monhaven Community Partnership, Strive Higher New York City, Project Yes, and we also collaborated with ACS, who was already working with the Fire Department of New York City. So all of us were able to come together for this event, and the lines were around the block, families were waiting. We had an opportunity to just make some connections with students and families and talk about the work that we were doing. And the support and everything was just so tremendous.
Yeah, and when you talk about literacy in the borough of the Bronx, obviously one of the things that we've always talked about on our show is the fact that there seems to be a lack of bookstores and places for people to really be able to go and enhance that. Talk about bridging that gap, because that's a huge gap that we have, and particularly for low-income families. I mean, it really plays a really important role of literacy well, for anybody per se, but particularly in the area of low-income families, not even having the necessary resources to be able to succeed.
I think that also goes back to just how we look at education. We see education as a privilege when it shouldn't be. Education for everyone. And especially during COVID, where like families can't even go to the library and like get a book. And that's the great resources in the sense of like having those books for children to read. So that's where we come in, trying to build children's libraries and giving them these kits and these worksheets and just any type of information we can provide for these families so they can continue what they're learning in school. Also, we also collect used books, like Jerelyn used books, to build up classroom libraries. That's another aspect we're starting to do, just because we want to give access to everyone for these books. Like I remember being an ELA teacher in the South Bronx and like scrambling around to find books and how difficult it was. And I know from that personal experience, like no teacher should have to go through that. No kid should get dirty, dingy books that are old, but we want to give them something. Like every kid deserves a brand new book. Every teacher should have to focus on just teaching and not having to figure out how to make a donors choose, how to do all these other resources, like just because we don't have them in the school. And I think that's where we want to challenge that gap and minimize it, especially in New York City, where our public schools are funded by the neighborhood. So you don't really see this issue on like the Upper East Side or at these other schools that are in wealthier areas. And we want to focus on these like low income areas that have been historically oppressed and make sure we're providing the service to the Bronx and hopefully further along different parts of New York City.
Yeah. Rena, talk to me a little bit about the lit kit, because when you talk about providing a service, you know, a lit kit is provided to those who are taking part in your program. What's a lit kit?
In our literacy kit, you can find 2 culturally responsive and diverse books. And the reason for that is that we acknowledge that the biggest barrier to literacy is access to books, but we also want to be able to provide literature that is relevant to our students and their lives, where they can find characters that they can connect with and empathize with. We also provide bilingual comprehension guides. So those are guides that family members and caregivers can use while they're doing read-alouds with their children to really help foster their comprehension. And as Anya mentioned, we also create, we have a team of educators that are creating these customized reflective activities that tailor to each book within the literacy kit, so that we really hope that we can foster a love for reading that can truly transcend the walls of the classroom and come into their homes. And we want the discussion around that book to be ongoing, right? So even after you're done reading, you're still thinking about what you just read, and you're having that conversation with your family member, your caregiver, about what happened in the book. And we also provide writing utensils and a pencil case, along with additional resources in terms of phonics cards and sight word flashcards, depending on the age group.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, but so much great work that you guys are doing. Continue to do that. We can get people connected to you. I'll tell them in just a few seconds. But Anya, Rita, thank you so much for being with us here on Open.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to have you. Listen, now, if you want more information about them, what do? You can exactly go to their website. The website is startlighthouse.org. And then also you can follow them on Instagram, also on Twitter and I should say Instagram and Facebook at Start Lighthouse, at the Start Lighthouse. All righty. Well, we've got more show. Don't go anywhere. We've got more coming up right after this.
most at risk for coronavirus. People over 65, people with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes, people undergoing cancer treatment, and people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people, avoid crowds, stay home if you can, wash your hands frequently. Learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov.
And welcome back. The Bronx COVID-19 Project is an initiative of the Bronx African American History Project, one of the largest and most respected community-based oral history initiatives in the United States. Their goal, to capture the voices of Bronx residents, how their families, communities, and workplaces have been affected by the global pandemic, which has spread through the Bronx with deadly force. Here to tell us more about the project is the co-founder and project coordinator, Carlos Rico. We've also got joining us the co-founder and lead interviewers, Bethany Fernandez and Veronica Quiroga. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for letting us be here today.
Great. And as we can say, you know, COVID-19 had a huge impact across New York City, most particularly the borough of the Bronx. And so this project, I know, is very near and dear to all of you, but talk to us about what was the impetus in wanting to do this?
So I think that as the pandemic outbreak sort of started spreading across the country, there were a lot of initiative, a lot of desire to want to document people's stories. I had a conversation with Dr. Nason sometime in May and sort of expressed his desire to want to set up a platform to have Bronxites be able to tell their story in their own way without it having being saturated by any type of sort of journalism or storytelling, just more so them telling their story in their own way, how they want it to be heard. And that's how the idea came about.
Yeah. And so as you went about and you were hearing stories, what were some of the things that really stuck out that really maybe was a common thread amongst the people that you got stories from?
At this time of the pandemic, you would figure that, you know, people might be like every person for themselves, you know, they might not be considering or thinking about their fellow neighbor. And that might be true in other cases, but like when it came to the Bronx, people could literally may not have the same access to resources, or like it might have been harder to get those resources, but they were still willing and wanting to help people out, help others in this time of need. So it was like, I'm trying to help myself and I'm trying to help you at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it's just like this looking out for the neighbor, this kindness that really like stood out to me, and it just really highlighted like what the Bronx is really all about, because this is something that has been going on for years and years, and it just shows itself again during the time of the pandemic.
Yeah. Carlos, you're the project coordinator. You're the one who, pretty much coordinates things. Talk to us about putting this together, getting it together, and what kind of response you got when you tried to put this effort forward.
So one of the things that I wanted to do when creating the website for the project was making it as accessible as possible. One of the things that I've seen over my few years here at Fordham is that the resources are there and they're available to people to find, but it's not necessarily in the most accessible and necessarily the most intuitive way possible. So in creating the website, I wanted it to be very streamlined, very forward, and very authentic. And that's something that is sort of innate with the project that Veronica and Bethany were saying, in that what we have seen is that people have this desire and this craving for authentic human stories. Too often we're hearing the watered down version of things. Too often it's become enwrapped in a story. And for the agenda of something else, or for pushing, you know, a different angle on it, instead of giving voice and giving recognition to the authentic story that is being presented, that we have here in the project. And in coordinating, you know, these are my friends, these are my peers. So, you know, we just met once a week for over the summer, and we hash things out. We're very collaborative. It's very, we each bring something to the table and trying to push each other to make this better.
Making it better is obviously what we want to do coming out of COVID-19, how things become actually better. So as someone who's going to watch, how would you describe what they're about to see when they watch the project? What are some of the things that you can tell people about, you know, taking away from this project?
You know, taking away from this project, what you're going to see is a borough full of hope, full of resiliency, full of passion, full of intellect, and full of brilliant people. And what you're going to see is the Bronx is a place of resiliency and culture not found anywhere else. And what we hope to do with this, on top of just bringing awareness to economic disparities upon systemic injustices, is breaking down the mold and breaking down the stereotype of what people may think the Bronx is. And so when you watch these interviews of business owners, students, essential workers, what you're going to see is resilience, hope, change, story of humanity, and the story of a great community.
Yeah. Bethany, Veronica, I want you to join in on me in this conversation here by answering this question for me. When it comes to the issue of actually asking the questions, you guys were lead interviewers. What were some of the questions that you really wanted to have answered from people?
Like I said earlier, we really wanted to get down to the nitty-gritty of everyone's individual story. So this, for us, meant that we weren't sort of set on a specific set of questions, although we did have a set of about 6 or 7 general questions that we tend to go over during each interview. But we sort of just like to go with the flow. So if we notice that a particular person is more interested in talking about how their workplace was impacted by COVID-19, then we'll sort of ask questions based off of that, based off of what the individual themselves feels is more personal to them and is more just specific to their, or unique to their experience.
Yeah, I just want to second what Veronica said. Every story is unique, and I think it is our job as interviewers to sort of help bring out the uniqueness of each story, right? There might be similarities across multiple stories, but when you're in the interview, you're thinking of that person and that person only. And so when I think of questions related to that person, and, you know, how I sort of got to know that person, and like what information I know already, and how to like build up on that and bring forth the person's individual stories and, like, you know, what, as Veronica said, what they want to talk about.
And in your interviews, is there anything that like surprised you most? And Carlos, for you, I mean, watching, was there anything that in particular surprised you the most?
In terms of surprising me the most is how much I would learn about myself when either conducting the interviews or watching them. I did not expect to learn as much about myself and the way I look at certain things, and the way I look at community, and the way I think about family, and the way I think about where to consume my news, how to think about people. I think one of the biggest things that surprised me was that in throughout this entire process, I learned a lot about myself, along with a lot about the community that I like to call home.
Ladies?
Just to add on to that, I completely agree with what Carlos was saying. And then I also would like to add the fact that every Bronxite knows what's going on, in terms of the fact that we live within a web of sort of complicated systemic issues, oppressions. Nobody's sort of under a cloud or behind the cloud in the sense that they're lost, you know? Everyone knows that we're experiencing one of the worst economic recessions. Everyone knows that we're in the middle of a health pandemic. So what surprises me most is what Bronxites are making out of this, you know, rather than sort of glooming under the cloud or just sort of withdrawing. I noticed that almost, if not all of the people that we've interviewed have felt that this has made them want to push forward even harder, has made them sort of want to perfect their craft, whether that is storytelling, whether that's working with their nonprofit, whether that is being an artist, right? It's made them want to perfect that craft even more, and just really tune in to that side of them that perhaps wasn't being as shaped or as honed into as they would have wanted to before this pandemic. So for me, it's the resilience, and it's what Bronxites are able to make out of nothing, literally.
Right. Bethany, you get the final word. Your final thoughts.
I just would like to reiterate everything that Carlos and Veronica said. I think it's quite surprising, like, how I didn't directly ask about some of the systemic and like the big systemic issues that do affect us when we're talking about the pandemic in the Bronx. But people that we interviewed were very like quick to like put a name to that. Like they were saying, these are issues that are going down. This isn't just something that happened yesterday. This is stuff that has been going on. And so, yeah, I found it surprising because, you know, obviously I don't know how people are comfortable about talking about some of those topics, and you don't want to push it and say like, hey, let's talk about this. And they're like, I don't kind of want to talk about that. Right. But even without pushing for it, people were willing to speak on it, to share their opinion, to tell you how they feel about it. And then you could just open up and have that conversation there.
Yeah. Well, Carlos, Bethany, Veronica, thank you so much for being with us and sharing about the COVID-19 project. It's really much needed. I mean, I think we talk about the borough of the Bronx, a lot of stories, a lot of great people, and a lot of resilience. And so I know that's captured in your project, and we'll be able to see it and watch it and get a new perspective on the borough of the Bronx and some of its fine residents. Thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us on behalf of the BHP and the Bronx COVID-19 Oral History Project.
Thanks. All righty. Well, listen, now for more information, you can visit their website. Their website is BronxCovid-19OralHistoryProject.com. And unfortunately, we've come to the end of our show today. We want to thank all of our guests for joining us. Most of all, I want to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in. Now, if you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recablecast on Bronx. That's channel 67. If you have Verizon Files, of course, that's channel 2133. Or you can always check it out on the web at bronxnet.org. Also, if you want a brand new episode of Open, come on back on Friday. My girl, Rita Valentine, she'll be back to share you in a new episode of Open, talking about the arts, entertainment, and yes, Miss Cafe Con Leche will be with you. All right, for all of us here on the set of Open, Daren and Jaime saying take care, God bless. We'll talk to you soon.